Well, as promised, this is the video of the TS120S with the PS30 power supply, and I must say I've got the VFO120, but that didn't actually come with it. I had one in stock, so that was primarily very lucky. So what we've done is we've done the usual thing in the kitchen that looks out to the dam. This is the little spot that we seem to do a lot of videotaping from time to time. Videotaping, that shows my old age. So that's the VFO120, PS30 and TS120S. So what we'll do is we'll pop it out and see what we've got. Okay, so we've lost our beautiful view, but the light, as you can see, the sun's gleaming off the dam at the moment, so it's a little bit of a worry. So I thought we'll pull the blind down and we'll have a look. So here's all the original boxes that we were just looking at before. And is this not cool or what? The power supply and the radio have really done nothing in their lifetime. It's just so obvious. The VFO, this came from a friend of mine up in Queensland. That's better. Yeah, look, they're very hard to find sort of as clean. I had to pay some real money for it, unfortunately, but he was right. He had something that was very, very unusual. Now, obviously, I'm not hooked up to an antenna here. This is more of a condition display. By the same token, I'm pretty happy with what I'm seeing. It's very, very clean. And some of the oddities these days, I suppose, is the things like the MC10 boxes and paperwork. I don't know what happens to all these things. You know, like we were discussing this, like the Bermuda Triangle on a Facebook page today. Things like your mic plugs and your accessory plugs, and everybody would remember the red and white power cords that Kenwood sported for all their 120s, 130s, etc. Booklets that this one's had a little bit of marking, which is unfortunate, but hey, we'll take what we can get these days. It's great that we can, you know, have all the bits and pieces. A bit of a surprise package. This radio turned up with the original pamphlet, sorry, and I was just actually reading some notes up here. They must have been comparing how much a 520S was and different pricings, etc. That, I swear, we know we've got a 430, but I think we've got a 120 sitting in the shed somewhere. It's definitely not in its box, but of course that's the next thing that we'll need to grab to, you know, finish that line up there. We'll leave the PS30 with it. You know, some people put the PS50 with them, and I've got a PS50 in stock, and yes, they look a bit more low profile, and you know, I think that certainly has value, but I don't know, it's just something about, you know, how they were sold, and this was sort of directly how they were sold with the TS120S book PS30, and this was what you bought in the 80s. You just came along and went, okay, I need a power supply, etc. Your precaution sheets, and you know, no point telling you what's in a TS120 book because I'm sure you know. The pamphlet was nice. Certainly the level of detail they went into back in those days, they certainly, you know, did a great job of giving you an idea what you were buying and why it was so innovative and why you needed to buy it. Well, here we go. Actually, I hadn't looked at the back. So if we've got this pricing right, a TS120S was between $650 and $685, judging by what's written here. A power supply was $195 to $190. The VFO, hard to believe that, if it was $50. I reckon the speaker wasn't very expensive back in those days, but you know, there's all your bits and pieces. And if anybody's watching this video and they have an AT120 that's really clean, that we would love to grab for it, of course. Oh, good point. There was the PS20, which was the low current power supply for the 120V, and would be kind of keen to get one of those because we'd love to get a 130 and a 120V now. So we've got the 130S, 120S, so we're on the search for a few bits and pieces. But yep, that's the original pamphlet. Once again, you know, a pity that it's been written on, but you know what? I'm getting to the stage that I'm getting less anal about these things. It's crazy, but starting to become a realist on what's actually really available. So that was your 30 amp supply. Actually, just before I say that, 30 amp was it? Hang on, let's have a look here. Specification, here we go. 20 amp supply, that's better. So they said continuous load was 15 amps, 20 amp intermittent 50% duty cycle. So not 30 amps, 20 amps. Sorry about that. But certainly they were a good supply. I've got a few of them out in the shed, but geez, none of them look like this. You wouldn't want to see the ones I've got. I've got 5 or 6 that don't look anything like this, and some of them got over voltage faults and things we've got to sort out. But yeah, look, as far as a TS120S, I've never seen one that has been quite as clean as this one here in the power supply to suit it. They're just not a mark, and I suppose I can do some close-ups to give you a bit of an idea just what we're talking about there. I love that little flicker. It started on 188, it's 17.9 now. Here we go. I'll just flick it up somewhere. 195.2, that'll do. But yeah, look, it's a very, very well looked after 120S. Look, I don't have the backstory completely on it. The chap that sold it to me was non-radio related. I do know that it's part of a sale of a chap that unfortunately has had to go into a nursing home. But I think one of the great things, Phil, that was looking after the sale of it, he did his research, and this wasn't cheap. By the same token, look, I paid him extra, another $50 odd to take it down to pack and send to make sure it got to us in one piece. I honestly wanted this thing here in one piece, because it wasn't really about the value of the cost of it. It was more the fact that it had such good historic value in this sort of condition, and well, we just love these sort of things, I suppose. It's a strange world that I've sort of developed for myself, but anyway, okay, so that's the TS120S with PS30 and VFO120, and obviously we'll oh, there you go, there's the VFO cutting in there to, oh, is it there? Remember, yeah, there we go. So I can actually run the VFO from there, or I go back to main and we're on the main VFO back on 40 metres, so there you go. Not something you use a heck of a lot, but hey, handy, isn't it? If you want to do split and that sort of stuff and call up and down the frequency a little bit. Alright, well, we've got a bit of cleaning up to do because I've sort of killed Sam's kitchen a bit. The other Kenwood boxes down there, they're the external. They're the internals. Now, the externals had some writing on them, but the internals were perfectly clean, so that was the thing about Kenwood. You always had a second chance. If somebody had marked the boxes on the outer layer, you still had the inner layer that you could pull out and have in pristine condition, and which is great. It was a very good idea of Kenwood's. I think they were very, very clever. All right, well, that's it. You've seen my kitchen. Normally you'd find a Kenwood Mixmaster in here, but not today. You find a Kenwood TS120 lineup. 73s to you from VK3 Charlie Mike. All the best.